second half of the notes, we're going to look at the California Gold Rush. There's this individual here, Mr. John Sutter, was granted the opportunity to start a colony inside of California at about 1839, 1840. He was a Swiss immigrant that made his way to the United States. While he's there, he decides that he's going to establish a water mill, in which he's going to call it the Sutter Mill. One day he had an individual go down to work at the mill. His name was James Marshall, and while he was working, he looked down into the water and he saw a type of gold nugget. He reached in, picked it up, and realized that he had discovered gold. He goes back to see Mr. Sutter, and they talk about how they were going to keep this discovery a secret. The next day at work, some of Mr. Sutter's employees did the same exact thing as Mr. Marshall. They reached down in the water and picked up gold. And that's really how the news broke all throughout California. The news of gold being discovered also spreads to the East Coast very quickly. We have newspaper articles writing about the abundance of gold in California. You have the president, Mr. Polk, talk about that gold was discovered, but is not sure actually how much was there. However, that didn't interfere in the Americans wanting to go out to the west to hopefully find gold. So in about 1849, after gold was discovered, about 80,000 gold seekers, we're going to call them 49ers, like the San Francisco 49ers, are going to make their way to California with hopes of making it rich. Now, this isn't just Americans that are going to go out to California. There's going to be lots of individuals coming from really all around the world. So about the 80% of the 49ers were Americans, and the rest came from all over the world. We're going to have individuals from Mexico, China, Germany, Chile, are all going to make their way from their homelands and get to California with hopes of really trying to strike it rich. However, we are going to see some discrimination here in the United States. The most targeted group was the Chinese. Inside of California, to kind of scare away the Chinese from making their way to California and participating in the gold rush, they're actually going to start passing laws that is going to make individuals want to second think or second guess their decision. For the most part, California passed a law that taxed individuals that applied solely to foreigners with hopes of keeping them out. So you're going to have to pay a tax to make your way to California and live there, and the opportunity you find in gold is going to be very slim. So you're actually probably not going to stay in California because you're not able to pay the tax. Which is very unfortunate since there is such a strong, Chinese culture presence in California, especially San Francisco. Most of the 49ers are going to arrive in San Francisco. We're going to see San Francisco's population grow tremendously. So in about 1850, there's roughly 20,000 people living in San Francisco. And then about 1880, it goes up to about 210,000. The price of land in San Francisco is going to skyrocket. Murders were very common, and there was wealth everywhere. The population boom, new businesses and ways to have fun started to pop up everywhere, and we'll kind of talk about what that was like inside of these mining camps. A lot of these 49ers had no idea how to find gold. The most common method in finding gold is that you would go out and stake your claim. So basically you're calling dibs or shotgun at a location where you are going to prospect or look for gold. Searching for gold is very backbreaking. For the most part, you're just going to be standing along the banks of streams or shallow areas, bending over and really lifting up items or rocks and pebbles out of the river, and hopefully that one of those pebbles are going to be a nice gold nugget. These individuals are going to work from sun up to sundown with hopes of just finding 1 or 2 nuggets throughout the day. The most common way to search for gold would be an idea of a placer mining. This is basically where we're going to use pans to wash gold nuggets loose from rocks. So we're going to stick the pan in the water, we're going to pull it back up, and then we're really going to shake it as everything kind of starts to trickle out through the bottom, and the big gold nuggets will stay in the pan. Most of these 49ers that are going to make their way aren't really going to strike it rich. Sure, there's opportunities for them to find a handful of gold nuggets. Some people find pounds of gold, others find nothing. So it was not really an opportunity for an equal opportunity, I should say, for all of these individuals to make their way to California to find gold and strike it rich. Eventually, we're going to have big businesses start to finance the ideas of mining companies, where they would go out and kind of hire people for really low wages to go work in the dangerous tunnels that they dug into the mountains looking for gold. During this time, you'll see, a lot of men and children take up the jobs inside of these mining companies in the mountains with hopes of finding gold and getting a percentage out of that from the mining company. Wherever you're looking for gold, we're going to have these mining camps pop up, right? This is the idea of like the wild, wild west. Out of the 49ers that are going to make their way out to the west, only about 5% of them are going to be women and children. Excuse me. So for the rest of that, it's going to be a lot of unmarried men that are out there looking for adventure, looking for a good time, a place they can go out west and kind of be free. Not a lot of laws were established during the gold rush. They would go out, look for gold, come back. They want to spend their findings. They want to gamble it away. They want to drink it away. So it really was an opportunity for them to really let loose and party. But you don't have to go to California just to find gold to get rich. A lot of people got rich by supplying the miners as they made their way to the gold rush. A lot of people aren't going to have the needed materials, so individuals are going to have the opportunity to sell those goods. This is really big in regards to supply and demand. So shortly after the discovery of gold at Sutter's Farm, by 1848, there's an individual named Sam Brendan that actually goes throughout towns and starts buying equipment that is going to be used during the gold rush, like shovels and picks, and placer mining materials. And then once the individuals come in, they'll go see him and buy the materials. Since there was an extremely high demand of the materials to go out and look for gold and really low supply, only a few people really had the power to control that, prices are totally going to go up. So that's the idea of supply and demand. If you don't want to just sell materials, you could open some type of inn where individuals can sleep throughout the night, establish taverns and some type of markets or other ways that you're able to make it rich besides going after gold. So shortly after we take over California, about 1848, we start to see the California population explode. Like I said, San Francisco from 1850 had about 20,000, and then about 1888 there was about 210,000 people just living in San Francisco. But also we see the population of California as a whole also explode. The gold rush population is going to change for California. It increased from about 90,000 to 900,000 in that 40-year span, which is going to allow the state of California to apply for statehood just 2 years after it was acquired by the United States. California will become the 31st state, and it will enter the Union in 1850. The main problem with California is that it's far away. It's far away from any other state that is part of the Union during this time. We see California, we have the Oregon Territory, and everything else is really unorganized. It still has a long time to go before it has the opportunity to apply for statehood. So the major problem is, how are we going to start getting people out to the west? You know, we talked about those overland trails earlier. There's stories that people actually left the East Coast and sailed all the way around South America to get to California. There's also stories that they left the East Coast, they sailed to Central America, crossed the Panama jungles and popped out the other side before sailing up north to California. But these are very time consuming, right? Oregon Trail takes 6 months. Sailing around and through takes even longer. So we want to find a way that we can get the American people there not only faster but for cheap. So we are going to start to see the transformation of the Transcontinental Railroad. However, it takes a very long time to finish, as it's not done until 1869. So the red here from Omaha making their way to Salt Lake City is going to be done by the Union Pacific, and then the Sacramento to once again like Ogden is going to be done by the Central Pacific Union. Central Pacific, is the green, and the Union Pacific is the red. They're going to start on the opposite sides and then make their way through. Very time consuming, especially since you have to deal with those mountains. Later on this week, we're actually going to talk more about the Transcontinental Railroad. We're going to talk about the kind of advancements made in transportation, like the steam-powered railroad and the steam-powered vessels. We'll get into kind of the Industrial Revolution. But for our notes for today, the Gold Rush and the Trails Out West are done. Hopefully you're able to get through all of the slides. If I went too fast, again, feel free to pause it and copy down the slides. Have a great day, guys.